Russia's foreign minister is in Israel to help push for direct Middle East negotiations. Sergei Lavrov will meet Israel's foreign minister, president, and the leader of the Palestinian Autonomy. The visit is aimed at getting back on track Palestinian-Israeli indirect talks, which have been hampered by last month's naval raid on a Gaza-bound flotilla that led to the deaths of 9 Turks. Another stumbling block to peace is the expansion of Israeli settlements in East Jerusalem. On Monday, Palestinian demonstrators clashed with forces, and many have condemned Israel's plan to build new homes there. And some Israeli settlers are so desperate to stay in the settlements, they plan to take up Palestinian citizenship, as Paulus Lear reports.
He's been called a traitor, a peacemaker, and a simple settler. But right now, Avi Farhan waves the Israeli flag under the title of refugee. He was born in Tripoli and forced to flee when the State of Israel was established and the Libyan government urged Jews to leave. Then, in the early 80s, he was taken from his home when Israel returned Sinai to Egypt. 5 years ago, he was again kicked out of his Gaza settlement, despite his wish to live under Palestinian rule. This is the closest he can now come to it.
If it's real peace, there's no reason on earth why Jews can't continue to live in these places just as they do in any city in the world. I sent a letter to the White House in 1979 asking to be able to become an Egyptian citizen. I contacted the leadership on both sides in 2005 to stop them from expelling us from Gaza. There were 17 families like mine who were willing to take Palestinian citizenship if necessary. I keep telling the Jews of the West Bank that this is the way to resolve the situation.
But many settlers, like those who live here, don't want to live under Palestinian rule and be part of a future Palestinian state. They'd rather Israel incorporate them as part of a future peace deal. But they're not too worried, because despite the freeze on settlement building, their government insists it's keeping this piece of land, which Palestinians claim is theirs. Ironically, says Mayor Oded Ravivi, the settlement freeze has in fact pushed property prices up. There's simply not enough space for the number of people who want to live here.
Seeing how Arab nations deal with different disputes, dealing with people who have different views, people with different beliefs and different religions, I personally wouldn't like to live in such a state. And as I said, I know that a lot of the Palestinians who are neighboring with us in good relationship prefer to be on our side of the border than on that side of the border.
There hasn't been much enthusiasm from either Israeli or Palestinian leaders to the idea of Israeli settlers living in a future Palestinian state. They often dismiss the idea as a gimmick used by the settlers to try and save their homes. Dr. Mustafa Barghouti says the fundamental question is, who does the land belong to?
They're most welcome. If they can prove that their settlements are not, or houses are not on land that was stolen from Palestinians and that they are not thieves of land, they can stay and they can have Palestinian citizenship. But if Israel continues settlement policy as of today, it is not consolidating a situation of apartheid where you have 2 different sets of laws, one for Israelis and one for Palestinians.
The question of what to do with the settlements is unlikely to be answered by indirect talks on the go between Israelis and Palestinians. The talks were agreed to in March, but were suspended when Israel announced plans to construct some 1,400 housing units in East Jerusalem.
Most people here are not optimistic that the latest round of negotiations will achieve anything. US Mideast envoy George Mitchell spends his time shuffling between Ramallah and Jerusalem. But whereas nearly a year and a half ago Israeli and Palestinian leaders were meeting directly, they now have a deadline of just 4 months to hammer out an agreement.
If proximity talks go well, I'm sure we will get to direct talks. And if direct talks happen, then that will be a major indicator that we're going in the right direction.
But in the meantime, Avi Farhan and other displaced settlers have nowhere to go. And they worry that if the latest round of talks fail, there'll soon be more settlers facing the same uncertain future. Paulus Lear, RT, Israel.